better hang on, it's Enduro Racer. Enduro Racer is a 1986 game from Sega. You may have seen the cabinets that actually had a full-size bike in the arcade, not to be confused with Super Hang-On, which is the earlier and, to be honest, superior game. The unique thing about the arcade game was you pulled up on the handlebars to make your bike jump up over obstacles. And it all runs on the same hardware as Space Harrier, so of course you've got all that scaling going on. There are ports for the C64, CPC, Speccy and Atari ST, as well as the Master System. We won't be covering the Master System version today because it's a completely different game. It's not a port of the arcade game, it's an isometric game, and in any case, I don't have the cartridge. Starting off on the Spectrum, home ports by Activision. Game came 50th in the Your Sinclair Reader survey of the best games of all time. It's Enduro Racer, so if you've seen the arcade version, you have the handlebars, and when you come to the obstacles, you have to pull a wheelie in order to get better launched in the air and land more smoothly. On the home versions, you do that by pulling back on the joystick, and you have to time it exactly and hold it back for the right amount of time, and then your landing is smoother. Otherwise, you get a rougher landing and you slow down. However, the problem with that is that because you're landing and you may want to be changing direction as well, you end up pulling diagonally, and it seems to make it much harder than it would be with that separate pullback mechanic in the arcade. It would probably be better if the wheelie was activated with the fire button. And also capture delay isn't helping me at all today, because you've got to time it right as well. So while having a tune is quite novel at first when you're driving along, because it repeats, it gets very annoying after a short amount of time. There are other bikes on the road, and we will hopefully have some cars as well, vans, later on, level 2. Over to the CPC, where I'm going to be using a cheat because I want to see how far I get into the game. The arcade version has just 5 levels. So, given how long that first level on the Speccy went on for, how many minutes of gameplay we're going to get out of this game? 8 minutes, 6 minutes, 8 minutes, something like that. So that's why the time isn't moving at the top. Frame rate on the CPC is choppier. It's a direct Speccy port. And no, it's not like WC Le Mans where they did a proper job on it. Over to the C64. Now, on my roundup of C64 games the other week, I mentioned that this is almost like a Buggy Boy game, except on a bike, and it is. C64 magazines didn't like this, and C64 owners don't seem to like this as well. They say it's too choppy. And yes, it is the choppiest of the 8-bit versions. But it handles okay. Just got to watch yourself there, you don't hit the obstacles at the side of the road. It's not the worst C64 racing game I've come across, although reading some of the C64 users' reactions to it, you'd think it might be. It's choppy, but the game handles okay. Got a cracking David Whittaker tune as you play the game. I'd rather something was choppy than uncontrollable and had horrible scaling. The scaling on this kind of works, and level 2 appears to be the poo level. Yes, every obstacle is made of poo, or at least it looks like it. There's only one 16-bit version, that's the Atari ST, so off we go. It has this weird menu system, but it's hard to say weird, it just involves you using the mouse that you saw on some other games. Does Space Harrier do this? It kind of gave you a whole menu system because, 16 bits and you'd want this. Something thankfully everyone dropped very quickly because it doesn't work on games, does it? And so far, so good. It's nice and smooth. Bike handles well. We've got effectively 60 seconds to get through the level. Only if you like the arcade, you'd think this was a fairly competent home version. It's not like Space Harrier on the ST. This was still the era where software publishers were going and licensing individual games rather than getting a bulk deal. So you got all these Sega games going between different companies. You think at this era this would be Elite because they had Space Harrier. No, US Gold got outrun and Activision got this. Back on the Spectrum and onto level 3, which is looking very blue. Although you know what? It looks quite good with these shades of blue on the Specky. I think this is the watery level, and you do get some cars. Forwarded it on. And this is level 3 now on the Spectrum. It's not particularly difficult. Specky owners do rate this game rather highly. Although if it turns out there's only 5 levels, it might be questionable how much longevity there is here. Not a lot of variety in gameplay, it's the same obstacles over and over again. You do get the vans appearing from level 2 onwards onto stage 4. And this is the CPC version, and again the time is locked because I'm cheating, because I want to see just how many levels the home versions are going to get, because in the arcade, well, you might get away with 5 levels. I prefer the C64 version to the Amstrad. The Amstrad version is just a bit too choppy with the updates and is needlessly like a specky port. Stage 3 on the C64 and the water works really well here. This looks attractive. It actually does look attractive. You slow down as you hit things when you're in the air. Same level on the ST, and look at it go! This is cracking stuff! Especially for the era, this is really good. It's better than the Outrun on the ST. It's got a real sense of speed and movement. This is my first go on the game and I'm not cheating, and I'm straight onto level 4. Although it won't be for much longer if I keep hitting things like that. Yeah. Okay, the difficulty has ramped up. Oh, what even happened then? There's no way I'm getting off level 4, but again, this is my first go. I think it suffers from the being hit from behind thing that we saw on, was it Continental Circus on the C64? Level 5 on the Amstrad, and goodness knows what's going on. I assume that's the sea on the left. A frozen sea in white. Yeah, there's a water effect when you go over it. Level 5 on the C64, which could potentially be the last level. There's still poo in the road that we're jumping over, and giant poos across the road, yeah. Wouldn't grey have been a better colour than brown? Because, you know, this does look a bit scatological, doesn't it? There we go, end of level 5. And we ride off into the distance. That is the end of the game, isn't it? Yeah. That's taken about 6 minutes. 6 minutes to complete a full price game. Enduro Racer. Well, it's the poor relation to Super Hang-On, isn't it? It was in the arcades, and I'm afraid it is on the home systems as well. C64 version is better than anyone says. It's not perfect by any means, but it's playable. Ignore that choppiness, it looks attractive, the bike handles well. The problem is that, like the arcade, the game has just 5 levels, and potentially you could complete it in 5 or 6 minutes, which is ludicrous. And that's a real shame, because with some polish, this could be the bike equivalent of Buggy Boy. Certainly, that's the feeling you get when you first play the game. Spectrum and Amstrad, well, Specky version handles really well. You can see why it got 50th position in the Your Sinclair Reader's Top 100. The problem is, again, there's just 5 levels. Amstrad version released a choppier version of the Spectrum. I'm afraid it's just a little bit too slow and is needlessly ugly for a machine that can do better than this. ST version is the best of the lot. It's a decent conversion of what is effectively a very flawed and short arcade game. If you paid full price for this back in the day, you'd have been pretty disappointed. But today, well, I can recommend you can check out that C64 and the ST versions as well. For their respective systems, they're actually quite good racers. The problem is there's no longevity there at all. And that C64 version, choppy it may be, but on first impressions, at least it's fun, which is something a lot of C64 racers simply are not.